We're coming at you with another can, a fresh, cold can of Filmatic. I'm joined today by 5 film associates, my cinematic connoisseurs. Returning, we have Ben Casey. Ben Casey, how's it going today?
It's going pretty good.
Nice to hear. Connor Park.
I'm excited to be back.
Yeah, nice.
I'm here. Hello.
Connor, it's nice to have you on.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Darian is back.
What's up, Nabil?
Not much. I'm excited to talk about this. As you can see, I'm kind of rushing through the introductions. I want to make sure we can get right to it.
It's understandable.
Oh yeah, thank you for opening.
Podcast tastes great today.
Another can of Filmatic. Cooper Wisnett, first time. Well,
It's a pleasure to be here, sir.
Kind of. Cooper
Come a long
made
way
an
from
appearance.
Oh, yes, it is.
Yes, but it's nice to have you officially on.
It's an honor.
Jeff Williams.
Hello.
Jeff,
Thank you, Nabil, for having me on.
thank you for coming, Jeff. I'm really excited. to see what.
Don't set your expectations too high. I don't know that much. I don't know anything.
I think it's going to be. All right, guys. It's nice to have you all here. I'm really excited to talk about this. We're talking about the Florida Project, and it's a doozy. It's really intense. It's really emotional, and I'm sure our discussion is going to be paralleled in that way. So before we get to that, I do want to take a little bit of time to go through a little bit of movie news. Haven't done that in a while, and I think that as we start to return to form, in the sense that we're talking about a singular movie for the first time in a while, it makes sense to return to the movie news as well. Now, who here has seen Venom?
I have seen
Venom.
Venom.
Okay, so it seems like a lot of people have seen Venom. Probably shouldn't have asked all at once. Guess what, guys? Guess what? Some news came out today.
No fucking way.
Yes way. Venom.
Wait a minute.
Venom, Let There Be Carnage has been announced.
Fucking with
There's
me.
a Venom 2?
That's
Venom-
a goddamn lie.
I think
There is no Venom 2. It's Venom Let There Be Carnage.
Exactly, Connor. What didn't you understand?
I
I
really
think
hope
what you don't understand is that it shouldn't exist.
No, I think that's what we're discussing here, Connor.
Yeah. So
Venom, Let There Be Carnage. Why do we have this?
why do we
Dude, I
have
just
this?
can't wait
Jeff?
till they say Let There Be Carnage in the movie when Carnage comes on
When
screen.
Woody Harrelson
Holy
says,
shit.
Let There Be Carnage.
Ben, do you mean the final line in the trailer?
Probably. Holy shit. This series has great trailers from what I have seen. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Tom Hardy sounding like an absolute fool.
Oh, I'm
while
sorry.
reading his lines.
I have a parasite. That's literally what it is. I don't know.
These are bad people. These are bad people.
people.
Jeez.
It's really bad.
I really hope that it's not Venom 2 and that it's just Carnage. Woody Harrelson carries the movie, but
Carnage 1.
Is Woody Harrelson Carnage?
Yeah,
Do we know
with
that?
a post-credit
Yeah,
scene.
he's-
Oh shit! I just
he is
the post-credit scene. The post-credit scene. I haven't seen the movie, so
Oh, okay. Well, it made a lot
I'm
of
sorry.
money in
I'm sorry.
China specifically, and I think that's why they greenlit. And
Do we think
I
it's
think
going to
it's
be
funny.
rated R? Do we know?
it's going to be rated PG-13.
Jeez.
That's
All right. Well,
'Cause-
the only thing I wanted out of Carnage was a rated R movie. So
Let there be
Yeah.
PG-13 Carnage. Am I right, guys?
So does that mean that it's going to be Carnage, but with a more mild version of Carnage to present to younger audiences? I thought Carnage was supposed to be brutal.
Well, Jeff, that's the
Yeah,
same thing that people
Carnage.
said about Venom, and look what we got.
Yeah,
You know,
I know.
it's
I was
one
hoping that they
thing.
would fix the mistakes they made.
Venom is one thing, but Carnage is supposed to be carnage in the sense of that word. It's not supposed to be PG-13.
Yeah, there's some pretty dark comics involving Carnage,
Yeah,
and
like one of my favorite Spider-Man villains for that is.
yeah, I mean, I think they just saw that how well it happened to play out for them with the first one in terms of how big the domestic return was as well as the international return. So if that worked, they have no reason to finance.
Oh, definitely. It'll probably do well. I have a question, Nabil.
Yeah.
Or for anyone, I guess. I feel like Nabil would be. Is this going to be building towards Sinister Six, or are we building towards like a symbiote unit?
So Sony right now has their own universe
Yeah.
involving Venom, Morbius, which is supposed to come out this summer, but it's probably going to obviously.
Oh yeah. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I think they are planning to build up to that, but also they're trying to incorporate Spider-Man at some point.
Yeah, I didn't know if we were going to be seeing like more symbiotes. Like I think I heard at one time, like anti, whichever the symbiote is.
Honestly,
So does that mean that the Sony universe directly interferes with the Marvel universe?
well, that's the thing, is that people are wondering how they're going to explain that, especially when Tom Holland's Spider-Man was actually supposed to show up in the first Venom, but couldn't for other reasons besides it was supposed to happen. It was set to happen, but for scheduling reasons or whatever. And it's really confusing. I think they
For scheduling reasons, they chose to make a worse movie.
no, but the whole I don't want to get into the whole like Spider-Man legal fucking thing, but
Yeah.
I think he's supposed to be in 2 more MCU movies, and then Sony gets their full rights back unless they renew the deal.
Yes.
Which
So-
will not happen. They're
Oh,
going
no,
to
no.
figure out a way to renew the deal again.
Well,
Maybe.
if
I don't
okay,
think they want to.
if Morbius makes money and Venom Let There Be Carnage makes money, I honestly even consider that.
Oh,
I
they're
just
gonna
want to
make
check. I
money.
just want to check real quick. You're saying that it's a possibility that Venom Let's Make Carnage is gonna make money.
Then
It'll make money, but will it do well?
I think that all that really matters is that it has a above decent opening domestically, which based on the first one it can get, and
I definitely think
very
it will.
well in
I
China,
think
which it will do.
And it's got anybody hears that Spider-Man somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, so do they have the rights to put Spider-Man in this one? Because I know Spider-Man was like on a wall in the Morbius trailer, right?
Yeah, and also at the end of the Morbius trailer, Michael Keaton's Vulture shows up. You saw that?
Oh yeah,
So
yeah,
they're
true.
clearly using quote unquote properties that you would probably consider Marvel. But you have to remember that Sony still holds all the rights to all these, Homecoming, Far From Home. Marvel is just having creative control and doing distributing. So you have to remember that it's not like Sony is like, oh, we're going to use Vulture. It's Sony's using their character, their property, So
Yeah, so that's why Far From Home is bad. Marvel
yeah, that's why it
creative.
was bad. Yep.
Oh, we're gonna talk about Spider-Man again. We're gonna talk
Oh,
about.
shit.
We're gonna talk.
No, we're not. No, we're not. We got to move on. So that was Venom Let There Be Carnage. The news there was that the title was announced. It's being pushed to June 2021. So
Damn.
looking forward to that. Now,
We bought some time against that.
yeah, and to kind of linking with that, the Venom took the spot of the Batman, which was pushed to October 2020. The Batman, I'm very excited for it. I think it's gonna.
No, this is the Robert Pattinson Batman.
Robert
yeah.
Pattinson, directed by Matt Reeves. I'm really excited. I know Darian and I have talked about this before, but it's
Yeah, no, from what I've seen, I have high hopes, which might be a mistake.
I mean, it's an all-star cast. The Planet of the Apes trilogy by Matt Reeves is pretty incredible. I don't know. I'm just excited for a grounded yet comic booky detective that kind of hasn't been done before, and it seemingly has its own gritty realism that's also very different from Nolan's, just based on the pictures we're getting. So very exciting. And Scoob.
I think it has potential for me personally to be as that.
Yeah, no. Yeah,
What I've seen,
Yeah, it has inspired a lot of.
I really like.
Yeah, the suit.
Now, will this Batman be having its own rendition of the Joker?
It's not going to be tied to Jared Leto or Joaquin. So if he does choose to, I heard there were talks that if this one does well, he's going to have his own trilogy. So I'm sure that
Is there an announced film?
for the first one, no, there are a couple characters that have been confirmed. Not as main villains,
Riddler and Penguin.
but yeah,
are both
Paul
confirmed.
Dano, who is in There Will
And
Be Blood,
Catwoman.
which is a great film. I think we might do. He's a great actor.
Ooh.
He's playing the Riddler, and Colin Farrell
No Jim Carrey.
is playing
I like him.
Colin Farrell very good as well. So it's exciting.
Do we have news on Alfred? character?
Alfred is
Andy
being
Serkis.
played by Andy Serkis.
Yep.
Oh, insane!
So yeah, very exciting I'm very excited for the cast. Yeah. All right. Who here is a fan of Scooby-Doo?
Of course I am.
I am
Yeah, definitely.
How can
such
you
a
not
fan.
It's
Live
solid stuff.
Until about the time I was 11, I had the shaggy haircut.
Damn.
Darian still kind of has it a little bit.
I remember the Jeff Shaggy here.
Well,
They were not. It was a terrible cut. But anyways, Nabil, continue.
I don't know if anyone saw the trailer for the animated feature Scoob! Exclamation. But
God.
I have not, but I would love you to tell me all about it, Nabil.
well, it's the trailer paints it out to be mostly an origin story about Scooby meeting Shaggy and the Mystery Gang all meeting each other as kids, and then the last quarter of the movie seems to be about.
To be
That's the
fair,
main thing.
I
Whatever it is,
love-
I'm dubious.
It's probably them solving their first mystery.
Yeah.
I
The-
love the interpretations.
the summary for it.
All right.
Yeah.
No, Ben, feel free. Continue.
I love the interpretations where they're kids, like Scooby-Doo in the 90s, a pup named Scooby-Doo, and that is the best Scooby-Doo show. And by that, that's all. That's all I wanted.
Who's making this movie?
Who's making it?
It is being made by Warner Brothers and Atlas.
What is the
Entertainment.
animation like?
It's I don't know how to describe it. It's 3D, but
It's pretty bad. That's how I'll describe
it's
it.
probably one of the worst I've seen. It's kind of
I'm gonna take a.
Yeah, especially with Illumination and everything that they've been doing, it's just really hard to try to
looks
pull
like-
off that style if you're going to put zero
but
detail
worse.
and effort into it.
It looks like a weird. It looks kind of like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs style, but with
something
a little
about like
twist
how
that
smooth they are
is not
kind of
good.
off-putting.
It
Yeah.
looks
I-
disgusting.
It looks like a combo of the Cloudy with a Chance of Meatball characters combined with the Michelin Tire Man, almost. I think would be an accurate description. It's not very flattering to the characters.
I think there's a couple ones like this one of Shaggy holding. The lighting here looks really good, but the one where they're young, I don't know. It's really strange.
Yeah, and so the news there is that it's being pulled entirely from the theatrical release. It's going straight to on-demand.
Ruh-roh.
Deserve.
I don't know who did the rut-row, but that was pretty good. Anyway,
Obviously, Ben. Obviously, if you're a real Ben stan, you know it's that noise.
It's
Long-time
that
viewers of the
noise.
podcast would know that's a Ben Rutrow.
so this on-demand thing is kind of, I mean, it's pretty funny because it's Scooby-Doo, but also in the sense that, like, you know, what does this mean for other movies? There are a lot of movies that were set to in the June to August block. Wonder Woman, Tenet, Christopher Nolan. So there's this wonder of, are other movies going to be also pushed on demand? And that's the big question.
Are there any candidates?
I mean, something of that scope that could be pushed. I mean,
Was this a large?
not necessarily,
personally
but it
not
shows
caught any
it shows
of
the
it.
faith they had in the movie in the first, for sure. You know.
Yes, but if you push it to solely on demand, you are going to restrict the amount of people that are actually going to go out there and try to get it. If it's available like that, people will be able to pirate it easier. If you can find it on demand somewhere, if you can get an actual copy where you can bootleg it on your
Yeah.
own device.
The three big movies that are supposed to be coming out this summer are Black Widow, Wonder Woman, and Tenet. Black Widow was pushed to November. Wonder Woman was pushed to August. Tenet is still in its place of.
I have a quick question directly to this. Does anyone here actually like have a plan to go out and watch,
No.
or any?
I don't really have any plans to go out and watch anything.
That's fair, but I mean, if
under
it,
normal
you know,
circumstances.
if you like Marvel movies, like I'm not a big fan, but I just am not interested in Black Widow. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be at this point, or if they've just lost a lot of people.
Yeah, because you're at the point where, and we're getting back into the Marvel thing, but I mean, just to respond to you, it's just like we're getting to this point where it's starting to become a chore, and everything's having the same formula no matter what the character is. So it's just, we're getting to the breaking thing for a lot of people our age
Yeah,
and following, and so we were.
and I bring that up because you listed that as like one of the bigger movies coming at the time, and I feel like it's only listed as big not due to hype or anything, just simply the fact that it's a Marvel,
Right, yeah.
which isn't a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really, and again, I mean, it's just, I don't know where Marvel's going to be going in the next few years. I think that,
I think they'll still just be doing the exact same shit.
yeah, but how long before that becomes not financially viable? How long before they
I
have
don't think you understand.
I think they've got
how much
plenty of
American-
time.
Almost forever.
Damn.
American consumers like to be shoveled the same exact horse shit into their mouths.
Yeah, but do you think people said the same thing about, like, Westerns or, you know?
Like, if you don't care about all the movies sucking by now, I feel like you're just gonna watch them forever.
Fair enough.
Well, here's my perspective. I agree with you, Cooper, but also I do think, and it goes same way as what it goes two ways with what Jeff was saying about how people will just keep consuming the same thing, and I definitely think that's true. But also, I feel like people's attention spans are getting lower with things, and I feel like we are on like the fall of the Marvel hype at this point. I'm not saying it's not going to be viable. I agree with Cooper. In that sense, but I do think there's going to be some decline. Probably not enough to stop them.
Yeah.
I feel like whatever comes next will be like virtually the same thing.
Right, and, you know, on a more maybe positive perspective, when you see things like, you know, the Batman, the fact that it seems like people are trying to do things differently, that's a little bit of a hope, you know, to think that.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, so
James Gunn's The Suicide Squad.
You know what I'm hoping? I'm hoping that after Black Widow, Marvel doesn't just snatch up Florence Pugh, and then she's just gonna be a bunch of trash Marvel movies instead of being the lead of like every good movie.
The Marvel movies at this point don't even, in my eyes, feel necessarily like movies. Like, I don't mean it in
Martin Scorsese over here.
He's not
But
wrong, though.
it feels like they're more hyped up for like
He's
it's
not
like
wrong.
the cultural event. It's the universe that they exist in. It's not the actual
Yeah.
movie, the actual
See,
finished
because
product.
you got to give props where props are due. You know, Marvel built this whole universe, whatever. They made it financially viable. They had the most grossing movies. They had the greatest grossing movie of all time. But it just gets to the point where it's like maybe they made it too well. You know, now it's so well done, and we know this universe so much, and everything is connected and all this crap. Where 10 years ago we would have blown our minds, but now it's just like okay,
Well, world building is one thing, right?
Yeah.
But storytelling is another, and I
yeah,
think
no,
that's
what I'm
where
trying
they're
to say is that
short.
you gotta be consistent with both of them.
Yeah, I think that they do also. You have to like give them a chance. I do think they have the to improve, obviously, but it would be a surprise to me at this
Yeah,
point.
well, it just also feels like every time it could improve, either Marvel Studios itself declines it, or it just doesn't work out. You know, you see Ant-Man, Edgar Wright was supposed to direct, and he wrote the script, and Marvel didn't like the direction he was going, and they fired him. And Ant-Man was
Yeah.
still good, but that's just because they kept most of his script. You know. And,
Yeah, and I also find something interesting. Also, like for me, at least with Ant-Man, it feels like a lot of pressure falls on the actors to kind of carry the mediocre script or story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
which is interesting because like Paul Rudd, I was able to me. I just liked his performance a lot.
Yeah,
and he does the character well.
You see those Edgar Wright.
I feel like
yeah. No, go ahead.
I feel like at this point, like if Marvel were to get like increasingly better, or like a lot better, it would have kind of happened already. Because at this point, they just don't really have the incentive to like go crazy and increase in quality because everybody's watching their stuff, and for at least right now.
That's a real looking at like that's just it's kind of like an economic
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
thing principle. Like if they have something working enough to a profit, they're not most like so.
Yeah, I think at this point the only hope for that would be is if the general population, the general audience, with a wall.
Yeah, or if something like Batman is able to draw more interest to whatever they create, that could be a large factor if their audience starts getting more interested in something.
It's just
it really depends.
It's a complex situation. I just hope that I hope I can see a superhero movie in my life can even hold a candle to Spider-Man 2.
Do you think once Sony, if they end up getting full control back over Spider-Man after the next two movies, do you think that they would do a better job? Or
I don't think it's necessarily okay. I think there's more opportunity too, because I think Sony is more likely to hire interesting directors and be open to more creative things than Marvel Studios is, which isn't. I'm not trying to like. I'm not saying solely because of the studio, just based on past events. The firing of Edgar Wright with Marvel, all this stuff you hear about creative control, not really. So I just feel
Yeah.
like
I think Spider-Verse.
Go ahead.
I think Spider-Verse is a good example of willing to take a creative chance and making a fucking great movie.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And with that, I would definitely say Sony. Then again, we just found out also this week, movie news, that Sam Raimi is confirmed to be directing the latest Doctor Strange, which is pretty
Had
interesting.
that not been confirmed sooner? Was it just sooner?
Yeah, it was just a report before, but now he actually confirmed it himself.
Yeah, that's cool. That is the one Marvel movie I have some interest in going out and seeing. Not necessarily in a theater, but somehow. So that's something also.
Yeah, especially with Sam Raimi's roots of horror, the Evil Dead franchise.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think if Marvel lets him have his control, it's going to be brilliant. And if they don't, it's going to be pretty sad because I feel like once again, you're going to have this MCU fan base just blame the director. It's a situation for sure. All right. I think we've wrapped up. It's time to talk about the Florida Project.
Where are we starting? In the beginning?
It's like we're gonna discuss the movie chronologically.
Well, I
No,
mean,
we're just
there's
gonna do a
some scenes-
table read.
There are some scenes that stick out more than others.
Okay.
That was good, Nabil. That was good.
Because that's the beginning of the movie. Get it? So like table read.
I got it. I got the joke. Joke explained.
Joke explained.
What?
I don't even know where to begin. Honestly, there's just so much to talk
Should we
about.
start off with someone giving a summary of the film?
Yeah, that's a good idea, Jeff. Anyone want to give a quick little walkthrough?
Generally, not going to be. Do we want to do spoilers, Emil? Probably will.
Oh, absolutely.
Have to cover them. So, I mean, for now, I'd say the movie. Good way to describe it is it just follows it kind of follows the location of this hotel where you have a lot of people that are living there, low income situation. It follows this group of kids that play together, different at the hotel, and their couple of their parents as well, and the owner or the manager. It's a very emotional story. You can get in
Yeah, that's a
as it begins to be by certain.
thanks. Really, it's like as general as you can get without spoiling. So that's yeah. We'll try to refrain from spoilers for now, I guess. But I think it's gonna be inevitable.
Yeah.
We'll make a little warning before.
Yeah, the warning is just gonna be Cooper yelling "Warning!"
I'll do my best to remember.
Let's do it. Let's do a warm
We'll
up
cue
one.
you in. We'll cue you in.
Yeah, I can do that.
Warm up one, Cooper.
Yeah, can I hear one right now, please?
Warning!
I like the
Test
sniffle
Perfect
that
audio
follows
spike.
it.
Perfect.
Warning!
Can we each have one?
Yeah, okay.
All right,
Warning!
you each want to do a warning? That's fine.
I mean, I did mine. You can take
Warning.
that audio clip. Warning!
Okay, let's get into it. Do you think that either Willem Dafoe or Bria Vinate, who played Haley, do you think they deserve to be recognized at the Oscar? Either or.
I believe
Because-
Willem absolutely did. And I know that he won the award, correct?
Oh, hold on.
I'm pretty sure he won Best Supporting Actor. It was interestingly the only award
Oh
the
yeah,
film was nominated for,
he was nominated.
which he didn't win. Okay, he was nominated.
Yeah, no.
Well, I think it's interesting because I think that's a super safe nomination. I think it could have and should have been nominated for a lot more. I think that picking Willem was like, here's this very, I think he's a very well-known actor. Most people know him for Spider-Man 2, all right? But I mean, when you really look into it, he has a great, filmography.
Actually, he was the first Spider-Man.
That's what I. Yeah, no. for
Oh,
sure.
I'm sorry.
He was in Platoon. He was in
You've lost all
Platoon.
credibility, Ben.
Obviously that
you know.
masterpiece that is The Lighthouse, which he should have got an Oscar for.
That came out after this movie.
No, we're talking about his
But
filmography.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
But at the time, I think it's a pretty safe nomination for them to pick. But I think he definitely did deserve it. Because his character and really inside of him. I think in a movie where so many characters you have an emotional connection to, he's still able to stand out because he's put in a tough situation in which by no means are these people easy to deal with. They being so in such a hard situation, they're forced to do a lot of things that aren't great, and having to deal with these kids running around. And Willem does a great job of that while showing a human side in that he's able to care for these kids and recognize that they aren't by choice.
Right. And
Yeah, Ben, like what you were saying about how you feel that real, what was it you were saying about feeling the emotional connection through him?
Oh yeah, feel what he feels, and that's what acting is about. Acting is about making your audience feel that connection.
Yeah, and that his performance really is what leads to this movie being so great in my eyes. Is because really when you're feeling all these emotional connections to each of the characters as you develop internal feelings about these characters, it's all primarily through the interactions that he's had that have the strongest emotional connection to the other.
Yeah.
Because it's constantly him allowing passes to them, being lenient with them, trying to help them, while also just being frustrated and annoyed with them at times, but in the end still taking care of them.
Yeah, and in so many ways, like he's almost like one of the most interesting parts of the puzzle. The movie. The relationship with his son. He has to deal with other motels to help Haley in terms of the one night and stay at his motel.
That's so true.
He has the fondness for children, and then there's the whole role that he plays in the climax, in the sense that it's implied that he's the one have called authority.
Really?
It's really interesting to me.
Yeah, I didn't catch that.
Yeah. Wait, Darren, you go ahead first. And
Yeah, I'd like to move on to that point in a second. I just think it's if you haven't seen the movie, or if you have, I think it's interesting, this dynamic where, like everything that everyone's been saying, is he is like this merciful yet frustrated. He's like a father, which is really cool because you're also watching a mother and her child, but he is kind of like the father figure to Haley, which is interesting to me. He's looking over her and doing things for her that she would do for me in a lot of different scenarios, which is cool. And definitely a really great performance.
yeah, And what I was saying was that I think that although the movie never explicitly like reveals it, I think it can be inferred that it was him because of there's a sort of change in his attitude that I kind of felt in the way that he got a little more sympathetic towards her and concerned about Moon. And the DCF also had security tapes showing all the customers. They mentioned that.
That is true.
And I think
The
that
tapes.
there's the part where when they're coming in, he immediately goes outside to the back of the building and just starts smoking a cigarette. And I think it's pretty clear, at least to me in my view, that it seems like he knows what's going on, and he only actually goes upstairs when he's screaming. So that's what I got.
That is true. I didn't notice that on the first watch.
Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't catch that either, but now that you're saying it and looking back at it, that definitely seems very, very possible.
Yeah, it seems
Actually-
like the correct conclusion.
I think that makes the ending so much more intriguing because I think that, it would be a lot easier to say, oh, her friend downstairs called, I guess this is a spoiler, calls DFS,
DCF.
DCF.
DCF, alright. Her friend downstairs, because they had just gotten into a physical altercation, it would make sense that she would call DCF. But put it in there that Willem, forget his name
Bobby.
right now.
Bobby, I believe.
Bobby.
Bobby, yes.
If Bobby calls DCF, that puts a whole other spin on it because I don't know, it just turns that whole ending interesting,
yeah, and
subverting your expectations.
yeah, because I feel like it's easy for Haley to be like, oh, it was downstairs because I beat her up, and I think she actually says that out loud.
She does, yeah.
So in that sense, it makes it a little, like you're saying, it changes the impact in terms of it being him and him, all of his complex problems and his complex character fleshing out to him make a decision, call the authority. So yeah, you're right. It's a very good take.
And I think it's really interesting also in the sense that there is still like the possibility that Ashley called the police on her because it was the night after she was attacked, right? I think that's like possible. I agree that I think there's a lot more to be when looking at it through the lens that Bobby makes a lot of things a lot interesting, makes him even more dynamic, and it definitely fits with what we saw from directly. But I just think it's interesting because the fact that it could have been either of them, it really highlights this change of Haley's character throughout the movie where she just repeatedly, people that are helping Ashley is at the helping her child. Bobby is obviously supporting her by allowing her to stay throughout various things that could have been grounds in the premises of the hotel. It just kind of evolves Haley's character a little bit more. The fact that the two people that were helping her host have kind of gives more of an impact, I think, to her actions. The possibility that both of them could have and most likely would have done what happened, called DCF.
Yeah, and like talking about that final scene because it got brought up. This is definitely gonna. But like the scene where it kept cutting back and Haley, DCF people, and the police officer, and then what's the little girl's name? Mooney, and then Mooney with the one lady out on the balcony, and, like Mooney yelling at him and Haley yelling, and just cutting back in between those, showing like kind of where that aggressive in Haley, and like maybe even kind of hint to part of the behind Haley having that personality. And I also liked that like it took her and like very much clearly showed like the kind of like the bad stuff that's going on wasn't okay, while also a more related side of the character, not easier to digest, but like you don't like the thing, but you understand her, you know.
Yeah, it's a character who the audience is still able to relate to entirely, and with even though they are a crooked protagonist, sort of like that Walter White effect.
Yeah, like even in Uncut Gems, with like the lead in that being like a very like easy character to just dislike because of all like the stuff that goes on with the way he reacts to situations and treats people, but he's still like an understandable character.
It's really interesting, and that brings up something that I was thinking about concerning Haley specifically. Would you guys consider her to be anti-hero in terms of writing, or if you want to get specific to the movie, we consider her to be a quote-unquote good mother? I think that's something that really will differ from person to person based on your perspective. Everyone has their own kind of life impact, I'm sure.
I definitely wouldn't define her as an anti-hero. I think what inevitably leads to her downfall is like her hamarsh, which still makes her the hero. She just obviously...
I don't really feel like she's much of a hero, honestly.
Well, I think that she definitely is, it's tough because I don't think it's as black and white as she is a good mother, but I think everything she does, she's doing for the right reasons. She just has a very poor attitude throughout, and that ends up making all of her actions seem flawed. And the actions themselves are, but I don't believe she was doing anything. I don't know. I think everything she does is justified, and that's what makes it such a human character. Is you understand why, like we are just talking, why she's doing it.
Exactly.
And I think
Yeah,
it's also difficult to comment because it's like you don't have a child, and I think that's something that anyone who's a parent would be able to relate to a lot more. Is what extent would you go to help your child make sure that they have over their head? And
Yeah, because like
Well-
while the oh sorry, you can finish.
Well, I think that's why she's such an interesting character, is because, as you said, it's human. There's as much as we want to attribute good or bad to people in real life, that's not a thing. There's no good and bad people. People live in this gray area, and Darian, I know that's something you've talked about a lot. And it's what I find so interesting about this movie is in throughout the entire film, people do shitty things. People do good things, but the entire movie is through the lens of a child who has this blissful ignorance to everything around her, and she is viewing her mother and all of these other adults, seeing their actions, taking them in, and perceiving them, as in much of a positive light as she can, because that's what she needs to do to get by in this mindset of a child. I think what the movie does very well is that it makes you think, from that kind of perspective. It's shot from that perspective. It's many of the scenes are portrayed almost directly from the perspective of Mooney. You don't see a lot of adults' faces in certain. Everything is focused on Mooney, and that actually reveals so much more about the other characters, specifically Haley. In Mooney, you see every bit of Haley that you see throughout the film. You see that Haley is almost like a kid herself because she's still growing up. She's a young mother who doesn't know how to do everything and who's in a difficult situation and can't handle everything, but she's trying to do whatever she can to get by. And really, that's the same thing Mooney is. She's in this situation where she almost has no control, but she is trying to make the best of it.
yeah, and there are definitely shades of Mooney and Haley, and I think there's also shades of Bobby because, like I was saying earlier, he's kind of like a parental figure to Haley, in my opinion. To some degree,
Definitely,
looks
yeah.
over her and also looks over Mooney. Obviously, I think prioritizes that, and that's his incentive for. But he still understands that they both exist together, and to help one, he does have to help the other until the end. But Haley is like a child in some way in the way that she acts, but I think she also has that protective nature that Bobby has.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and like to go back to Nabil's question, whether or not she like, I feel like just looking at it, like especially the way Ben talked about it, is like she is doing. And, like it's clear throughout the movie, even if it like doesn't look like the on paper, like stealing, prostituting with like they are prostituting, obviously, just always having her daughter there, which on paper seems like terrible parenting. Why would you subject your kids? But the way or like it's like that happening is never as negative and as bad. Like a genuinely happy mother daughter, and I feel like it's like even though bad, Haley makes every decision she makes and does everything does, even if it might not be the. That's like what she's got just to help.
Yeah, and I think if you want to try to translate it to good or bad, which I don't think is the thing to do personally, just because there are so many layers to the characters.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess you could say she's not necessarily a good mom, but she's the best mom that she could be. And I think something that is definitely done on purpose and definitely defends her character is, for example, the scene where they're in the rain dancing together, Haley and Mooney, and I don't think that is something that a good mother would do. It's spending time with your kid and caring about them and having fun with them and doing things that would make them happy as much so as you can, right? It's not like she's permissive or the correct word, but she tries to be a part of Mooney's life. She tries to do things for her, even if she's bad at doing them. That's still her doing them.
I could actually give a really good example of something. one of the most interesting parts of the movie to me is when she steals the magic bands. I think if Haley was really acting out of self-interest, and wanted to give off this image of like being a good mother, she doesn't take those magic bands and go use them. She doesn't take her kid to Disney. She realizes, that's not something they need to do. She sells them, deceitfully, but she sells them to be able to pay rent for her child and her to have a place to live. I think from personal experience, parents sometimes, in order to have this power over their child in a certain way, can use things like that, like, oh, I'm taking you to this place. It shows that I'm a good mom. I'm a good mom. But she does things that she needs to do to survive in this
Exactly.
setting.
Do you think she wants to be selling her body to random to pay her rent? Obviously, she doesn't. That's not for her. That is
Yeah,
for her daughter.
and
And it's not even just rent. It's not like she couldn't find another place to live, which I think is kind of shown. She could probably find a place to stay for a couple days, but it's also the fact that she has to feed her child, right? These are things that she might be able to do without for a couple days, but Mooney obviously cannot, and that's why she has to go to the extent of, selling her body.
yeah, I think it's apparent also in the first half of before she turns to all of this. She even is talking to someone. I don't remember exactly what the role was, but he was saying how she has been trying to get a job up and down the strip. She was stripping at that point, and she mentions that just because she won't do tricks like the other girls, that she wouldn't get hired. And it's only after she gets kind of, in her own eyes, betrayed by Ashley, her only lifeline, that she turns to selling her body to, I believe we don't even see her selling the perfumes until the middle part of the movie. So I think that's also something that considered.
Yeah, I think she directly says in the scene that you're referencing that the other people are making money, that are stripping. The other people are making money by doing like private things in the back, which she doesn't want to do, which obviously implies having sex with customers at the strip club, right?
Mhm.
So that is directly stated and presented. And then over the course of the movie, you see her eventually have to do that, something she refused to do and was willing to lose her job over, trying to find any other way to keep money incoming for her and her child. She eventually reaches this point where she has to go to that extent. It's a last resort, but she still does it
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
that she can
and
have money for.
in that scene, she's talking to a benefits a benefits officer from Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. I did a little Wikipedia search there, but I think it's very fucked that she tells them, "Hey, I lost my job because I wasn't going to have sex with people for money," and
You know,
they deny her benefits. The government denies her benefits because of that. And then the same government that has denied her benefits to support her child then comes and takes her child away because she begins having sex for money. It shows a fucked system.
yeah.
And that's only the beginning of how fucked the system.
Yeah,
I
and
just think
it's all clearly like very intentional, because you could go out and say, "Oh, well, was she like really continuously trying to get a job?" No, she was doing these other things, but she has to make money. And I think it's very directly shown that, what you just said, that is what is happening to her. She is being screwed by the system, and it kind of, I think, makes a case for people that are being fucked over by such institutions, because it's easy to say, "Oh, are they really trying?" It's easy to ask that, or say that they're not trying hard enough. But in dire circumstances like this, where there is no room to waste a day not making money, I think it's pretty evident that people are pushed to do quote unquote bad things. Not even quote unquote, they are bad things, but they become necessary
Yeah.
due to the sentences that are did by said, whatever you want to call it, system.
And I mean, speaking of the system, and if you want to take it a little on a wider scope of not just Haley's situation, the whole principle and that of this actually existing, of there being a ghetto, but in the backwaters of Disney World, created by virtually by Disney World and the town that it's made, and even one could argue the state that it's our economy is based on tourism, and a lot of that, if not most of it, if not all of it, can originally stem back to Walt Disney. So I think that's also just really, really, it's hard to think about that actually exists.
Yeah, and bringing up a big reoccurring device, I'd say, in the movie or image is the helicopter, right?
Yeah.
Which we all talked about while watching it. And essentially, if you haven't seen it, hotel is close to a helicopter, presumably like a helicopter tour place,
Yeah.
which are a common thing
Yeah,
in
that's
the
what I
area,
assumed.
which I have been on myself. And it's essentially just you fly over the city, right? Or the surrounding area of wherever it is in Orlando. You see Disney, you see whatever. And I think it's pretty fucked up that you literally just have people right next to them flying around to admire, oh, look at how nice all of this stuff is, and spending large amounts of money, presumably, to do so. And meanwhile, the people that need that money are just suffering right below them, right? Which is, obviously, I think a metaphor. They're just flying above them for leisure. And also, they're just, looking down on them. And also, from that perspective, nothing's wrong. You can't really see the problems when you're looking down on someone, right? I think that's something that you could draw from that metaphor that is the helicopter, which is pretty interesting. Obviously, a little bit of external analysis there, but also just in the literal sense that when you're looking at a place from afar, like this hotel, for example, right? It looks like a nice place. It's it's kept painted nicely. It doesn't look very bad from the outside, which you could say about the city as a whole. But when you get up close and you actually see what's going on, it's really fucked up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's this hidden. When talking about the movie, a lot of people refer to it as the hidden home. They're kind of. I think a lot of times in popular culture, homeless people are portrayed as living out on the streets, begging for money. Which I mean that's a whole problem itself, and how homeless people are perceived as these people who don't do anything except for sit around and beg for money. When in reality, they're most likely working some of the hardest jobs, just trying to make ends meet. And homeless doesn't mean you are without, any shelter at all. It means that you don't have permanent housing. And I think that's something that explored in this movie is so interesting. I have my own personal experiences with it. I'm sure plenty of people know people who have had experience with it, whether it's family or friends or anything. When you look at Disney specifically, I remember a study coming out that said that something like 10% of Disney workers surveyed have identified as homeless within the past 2 years.
Yeah.
And that statistic is ridiculous to me. I know that people like Bernie Sanders specifically has been fighting for Disney workers to have higher wages. So, fortunately, since this movie came out, I think there has been some progress. But the system that the Disney World has created here is incredibly fucked. How you can move into somewhere, focus the economy entirely on it, and the people who support and work for this Disney company and make them all of their money don't even have enough money to live freely in the area where they work and the area where this billion and billions of dollar company is flourishing.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be Disney. I mean, yeah, but what you're saying is very true, and I think it's kind of like not directly, what you're saying because it's a little bit different. But what Ashley, right? The friend of Haley's
that's
that
right.
is helping them get food at the beginning of the movie. You can take her as an alternate path if Haley were to just find a job, get a job, keep working at that, making money, quote unquote, in a more moral way or good way, correctly, whatever you want to say, right? She is not in any better of a position, right? She might have some sort of moral high ground and it might be more respectable, but even at that point that Haley was trying to get to, Ashley is still struggling. She's still living in this hotel. You know what I
Not
mean?
fair to say she's not better off though, because she definitely is.
I mean, she's not furthering anything
Because
for her, her
if you're not
child.
getting enough to get out, but you have a definite steady enough to stay there, as someone with a child, that's definitely a lot different than any week being the one where you get kicked out. For all you
To
know.
stay in a hotel?
I mean,
To
I mean,
also,
stay in a...
if the alternative is staying nowhere, yeah, there's a pretty big
No,
difference.
I'm saying, but Ashley is staying in the... I mean, Ashley and Haley are both staying in the hotel. They both have enough money to stay in the...
Well, but
they just have to
Ashley
do
has a
different things to
steady
get
stream
that
of
money.
income, whereas
I think the
she
point
does not
Darian is
have any
trying to
guarantee.
make... I think the point that Darian is trying to make is that even though she has a steady income, it's still not enough to find permanent housing.
Yeah, and
Yeah, that makes sense.
what I was going to get to
Yeah.
is like the net gain from even doing what somebody would tell Haley to do, right, is not very large for her child. It's not like Ashley has this larger like benefit for her child than Haley does for Mooney, because her child still can't go to school and they're still living in the same place and they still have all of their basic needs met. You know what I mean? Yes, it's like more consistent and a bit more secure for her and her child, but the problem is that's still fucked up that that's the standard and that
Oh yeah,
someone
most
in her
definitely.
position is better off. They're both still...
Exactly. The bar is so low. The bar is on the floor.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know.
Yeah, go ahead.
One thing, yeah, I was gonna say this might be jumping around a little bit, but the final scene, I know that was really powerful for me. What did you guys feel about that? Jeff, how did you feel about that last scene?
Well, for that last scene, I mean, it's really coming. We really already kind of discussed that for a decent bit. With
I'm talking about like the final shot where the girl or where Mooney goes to the friend's house and then they run away.
Well, to me, that was just kind of the wrap up of taking because the entire movie kind of revolves around the fact that they were able to take the perspective of Mooney and of the children, and she's gone through all these different things with having her mother leave her in a bathtub at night while she's having sex for money. All the different things with the agents, everyone, her mother screaming in that entire just hellhole of an environment. It was when she was getting taken away from her mother, and just to see her just find the only person in her life that's still feels like a stable force, and to just have that person go along with her friend go with her, it was just heartbreak. It was not heartbreaking. It was like it just made your heart melt. Just
Okay.
it was perfect that you could just see this absolute love between those two young girls who don't really understand anything in this world and have had to go through so much, but yet they're still able to just have someone. It was just great. I know everyone was either at the point of tearing up or actually crying during that scene.
Yeah, for me, I thought like the shot that was just like the long shot of Mooney's face as she just started losing it and like actually started crying, which you never see her or Haley do in the entire movie. Like every time something bad happens or something negative, you see anger and you see them reacting, and you see that out of Mooney even earlier in that same scene where before she runs away. But once she gets there and like sees, I guess, like what Jeff was saying, like her safe person, she kind of just comes to a point like you haven't seen any of the characters yet where she's just fully like broken and she knows that nothing that's happening at all is in her control even a little bit, and there's just nothing she can do other than just kind of let it happen, which kills her. And I don't know, I feel like that's something that like a lot of people can relate to, is just being stuck in a situation that isn't good, that you have no control over.
Yeah.
Yeah, and something I thought was really good about the way the ending was done was how the whole movie, the parts that were all the little kids roaming around, would always be shot very differently than the rest of it. It would have like a lot of handheld and a lot of movement, and it kind of gave you like this tangible feel of the scene being childlike. And then that last one was that same way, and then just cuts off as soon as they get there, because neither of them really have any sort of view for what comes next, even though obviously everything has to come, like all of the problems are going to come back as soon as that day's over. It's just like not thought about.
And
See,
I was just gonna say he talks about it feeling different, but you remember it's also filmed on an iPhone. That last part,
Yeah.
which is pretty incredible. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, one thing for me, like it wasn't entirely clear, to me at least, but I couldn't tell whether or not they actually ran away and went to Disney, or whether or not that was like an imagination of like what they wished they could do.
Well,
They were
I
actually
actually
just running to try to do that.
I actually have a quote from the director that I have prepared for this exact moment because, I think that's what it leaves a lot of people with, is with that being the final scene. People are expecting closure in some way, as you do with any film. But Sean Baker, the director and writer of the film, says about the final scene, he says, "We've been watching Mooney use her imagination and wonderment throughout the entire film to make the best of the situation she's in. She can't go to Disney's Animal Kingdom, so she goes to the safari behind the motel and looks at cows. She goes to the abandoned condos because she can't go to the haunted mansion. And in the end, with this inevitable drama, this is me saying to the audience, if you want a happy ending, you're gonna have to go to that headspace of a kid, because here, that's the only way to."
Yeah,
And I thought that was super interesting because that's what the whole movie is about, is putting you in that perspective of a child, and that, that optimistic point of view despite everything going wrong. You can dream that in her head, run away, and obviously you can't run however many miles it is to Disney World and get into a park as a 4-year-old, however old she is. But
I think they're 6.
all right. She can imagine that, and I think it's definitely not supposed to be taken a very interesting way to end the film.
yeah, and it's very divisive for that reason. Yeah, I totally agree. It definitely felt like a brilliant conclusion, and throughout the 2-hour runtime, we get these little hints of a better world beyond the motel, because you get these tourists that come in at one point, and you get all these glimpses, but you never explicitly get to see it until during that iPhone. And the kids just are finally breaking free from their shackles, and they get a glimpse of pure, unfiltered happiness. And I guess the idea within Mooney's head could be to just spend one more day carefree, without it being taken away. There's this idea of, to me, their childhood just kind of crumbled, and they've explored all these places, within the Florida projects, but in Mooney's mind, this is like the last place to explore. It's pretty. There's a lot of layers.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful in so many, specifically that it's tragic to be able to. This is what this child is dreaming of, and it won't be like that in reality. But it's that optimism throughout the entire film until she finally breaks in that last. I think so powerful.
Mm-hmm, for sure. And yeah, damn, it's a lot.
And not to backtrack, but actually was a little curious in doing some digging here, but about the character of Haley and whether or not she is a good mother and such discussions. Obviously, it's all up to debate, subjective, but the director definitely defends the fact in multiple instances that the whole point is supposed to be, that she is a person pushed into desperate, and it's supposed to, I think, extrapolating from that a bit, it's supposed to highlight what pushes people these places, and it's just unfortunately forced on society.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
People want to judge others. It's easy to think about what you would do in that situation.
What you should do in that situation.
What you should do. But in reality, it's like when everything around you forces you into a situation like that, you don't really know what is the right thing, because it's, again, that moral gray area where you're just trying to survive in a system that purposefully pits people against for the survival of some and the downfall of others.
Yeah, and I think it also just brings into question talking about, seeing it from the perspective of the child, and I think that the entire movie in multiple instances brings up the discussion point, of what is a mother supposed to be for a child, right? What is that role supposed to fulfill? And I think it extends beyond just providing things to allow the survival of the child. There is also a nurturing aspect and maintaining a positive relationship, which is something that Haley does throughout the movie. She is able to keep the childlike wonder of Mooney alive, through, the scene where she's giving her a piggyback ride, or the scene where they're playing the same scene. But I think that is supposed to be highlighted in that instant. And also, just a similar thing that was interesting that I read. There was a cut scene that takes place, I think, in connection to the scene where they're eating pizza, where Mooney is like complaining that there's no pepperoni on the pizza, or it's missing toppings or something. So Haley puts gummy bears on it, to make her happy. It's a fun moment between them. I think it's just another example of something like that where I don't know. There's a lot of scenes that are in the movie still where you can feel the relationship between. It's always positive,
And
aside from the money situation, the housing situation, and stuff.
yeah, and to kind of go back to what Ben was saying, I heard a quote a while back, not in connection with, but it kind of goes with what Ben was saying. It's easy to be a Monday. It's easy to look back the next day as somebody else and say, oh, if they had done this, then fine. Oh, I know the right thing to do. I could do it better than when really you're not the person. You're not the one having to make those decisions in the moment, second. You don't know all the other stuff going. So yeah, and what Ben said about people are to judge, right? That's something I definitely catch myself doing. Not active, but even just walking around. You'll see somebody and you'll kind of just automatically snap judgment, oh, this and this thing about that. When I try to stop myself because I know that's not how I actually. It's how you shouldn't think about, or that's not how you should. But I feel especially in this, and it's easy for people to look back or to look at that and say oh, I wouldn't be in this to be better.
Connor, are
That's just
you
not something you can say.
profiling at the Walmart again?
But yeah, no, I definitely think that it's a human response. Unfortunately, judging people, we're blinded by our own perspective because with how most humans are, we are, it's human nature to be set in your ways and being able to only view things from your own perspective, your own experiences throughout your life. So we can never truly understand other people, and I think that is again just a great thing about this film. It forces to view this situation from someone's perspective, specifically the perspective of a child and how children the world around them. I think a lot of times we think children are oblivious to a lot of the things going around them because of their because of their optimistic nature. But in reality, I think that they are just experiencing things as should. I think that they just haven't, as depressing as this sounds, been crushed by the weight of so many other things going on in the world and the reality of very shitty in human life.
Yeah, no, I think that the movie serves as kind of an experiment, psychologically or socially in a lot of ways, because you're presented with this conflicting character that is Haley, and people, like we were saying, will snap to judging her and viewing her negatively and thinking that her child should have been taken away from her as soon as possible and not understanding why she's doing what she's doing, that it's not justified. But I think it's really interesting because that judgment, like you said, comes from people being stuck in their ways and being limited to only their own experiences and perspectives. But unfortunately, I think a large thing that shapes that is also the system that we exist in, right? It's a large factor in shaping those perspectives. And it's a system that doesn't necessarily encourage empathy with someone who is struggling a little bit more than you are, because unfortunately a lot of people still are struggling, or maybe economically, right? People might not have a lot of money, but they're not in that position, and it's easy to say from your position, having a little bit more stability, that oh, she could have tried harder and at least gotten to where I am. And the same thing could be said to that person by someone who is wealthy and successful. And I think it just it kind of highlights the most fucked up thing, is that the system not only refuses to help these people, but it also conditions people to feel the same way. Because when you judge Haley, if you do, and view her as an unfit mother who doesn't deserve to have her child, it almost it's denying that she has the same rights and the same level of humanity as someone who's in a better position. It's like you've been conditioned to believe that people like that are not good people just because they have to do certain to survive. And it also highlights the lack of empathy that people are conditioned to have. It's pretty fucked up because in this situation, it's not even real. It's a movie, and people still, I think a lot of people would still enjoy negative people calling her out. And that really isn't helping.
It's significantly easier to look at Haley in a negative sense because it makes you almost feel better about yourself if you aren't in the same situation.
That's why anybody judges that.
Yeah.
For
I
sure.
think specifically with what you're talking about, Darian, with system, just gonna come out and say it. It's capitalism, baby. I think that capitalism is centered around this idea of a right of opportunity. So the right that everybody has the opportunity to reach that level of equality. But I think that, that's a really shitty way of thinking, because it's more like it should be more centered around the idea of equality of outcome, in which that people should be given whatever help they need to reach the mean of equality, to reach the end goal of equality. Because some people just need more help than others. But with the system we have right now is that everybody has the same opportunity, in the sense that, some air quotes there, in the sense that, everyone's free to do, whatever you want. But it doesn't work out like that. Certain people are born at a disadvantage than others, or certain people face problems that are out of their control and need more help than others. And the system we have and society we have does not offer help to those. It almost actively pushes them further down.
Almost like platform.
And yeah,
Yeah, the platform sends the exact same message that you're talking about, which I'd love to be able to talk more about. I don't want to go too far into it, but you literally just see exactly what you're talking about, with people physically, to make the point, literally being above and below each other, and the people that are below, the people on top, and the people that are on top, they have equal lack of control over the position they're in, but the people on the top still choose to shit on the people below them because they've been given a better opportunity than those people. And the people below them are struggling to survive themselves and have to do really fucked up things to get through it so that they don't die or starve, right? So, really good movie. I'd love to talk about it more at some point if possible on the podcast, but go check that out, the platform. Unfortunately, I think everything you're saying, not I think I know it is true, and it's really sad. I think there's also this illusion within capitalism and what people are conditioned to believe, that everyone has free will and complete control over everything that happens to them in some way or another. And if you had thought something through better, then you would have had better control over your future and could have prevented bad things from happening. But unfortunately, as we were saying before, it's never black and white or as clear as that. Everything exists in this gray area. I don't know.
exactly.
I just think it's pretty inhumane to look at someone like the character of him, think that they're bad or they're doing something wrong by doing what she had to do in this specific set of circumstances, because it just kind of denies the fact that she's human and can still make errors. Just because she's in a bad position, she can't do anything wrong. She has to do everything perfectly correctly to get out of that position. That's not possible of anyone. That's the problem, is when you put someone in that poor of a position and expect them to recover, you're going to need them to make zero mistakes along the way and experience zero external problems in trying to overcome the circumstances. And that's just not how things work. You can't just flip a switch when you've been evicted from your home or had a child too soon and just say, oh, well, I'm going to start making the best out of every opportunity that I've been given and just turn my life around perfectly with no hiccup. It doesn't work like that. And I think judging someone is kind of expecting more out of them than is humanly possible, and also kind of dehumanize that sense. I don't know.
For sure.
It is all a matter of perspective. Unfortunately, I think people have less control over their perspective thing. They're largely shaped
I think it
before you're able to be aware of.
Yeah, I think it's really incredible that Sean Bay, the director, was able to. I mean, even not just having this discussion, but still we're able to take the perspectives that are shown to us and expand it to our whole society. I think that's the mark of a really craft social message as well as a moment, And I had a few things written down here. I just wanted to touch on really quick before we wrap up. I thought that something that was really on the technical side that was really cool was the way that the music was incorporated. It kind of sounded like it was coming from an actual like iPhone or like a cheap portable speaker. and it just felt very
I noticed that too.
yeah, it felt very immersive and authentic. And
It's like the most immersive movie I've ever seen, probably,
oh, for sure.
in terms of like feeling like you're in the environment.
One thing especially like to that note that I really like with very shots, like clear color scheme and just like kind of little transition the color and just things like that, like the color.
Yeah, and the cinematography is so perfect in that way. You know, it's like eye candy because it's not, and it's interesting that it is eye candy because you know it's constantly being referred to as a dump, and that's the way it's painted to us in a social light. But the way that it's shot, it looks just so vibrant and beautiful, and it could be another illusion, kind of what I saw of showing the world through a child's eyes.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
for
think
sure.
it has
'Cause
two
it looks
effects.
fucking movie.
Yeah, I think it has the effect of what you're saying, Nabil, is seeing it from that perspective, right? Of a child, everything and magical still. And it also has the effect as or not as they from the outside, and choice on how you perceive just from that is clearly not indicative of what is actually.
Yeah, and it adds this almost documentary feel sometimes when the director kind of alleviates with the lower angles and some of the interesting choices of the cinematography, and it makes it all the more depressing that you're watching. It's kind of like, but and all of this comes together. You know, the performances, the writing, directing. You know, we talked about Defoe a lot. I mean, obviously, we got to give credit to Mooney, the child
The
star.
best child performance I've ever seen, probably.
Yeah,
hands down,
Same.
for sure.
Agreed.
100%.
Holy shit.
Yeah,
I can't think of something that can.
I mean, Moonlight is pretty comes close. To be fair,
Oh, that's true, but the really young kid is only like a third of the.
that's kind of that's the shtick there. But anyway,
One other thing I want to tack on really quick, I apologize, Nabil, is I think a third effect that the physical setting of the movie having with all the colors, the shots, is I think it also gives a look to the situation, right?
mhm.
It's there's kind of like the trash that, and the scene we were talking about William Dafoe's character. I think he also symbolizes hope. People are, the washing machine doesn't work, but he's like, we're gonna fix it next week. Fine. He's painting the building. He's trying to keep going on a good path.
When he gets the lights back on, when he gets the power back on,
Yeah,
that is incredible. That is one of the greatest, in this very, depressing and real movie, that also the sense of realism to that and this love of this natural humanistic character that Doe plays is just really powerful. And you can tell the way that everyone is cheering for him, which is great. Any other comments? Any final thoughts?
I
Did you have
will
any?
say one thing is that you mentioned the being able to extend to this like commentary on society, think about things right on a larger scale. If anyone is listening and hasn't watched the movie yet or plans to watch it, I think one of the best things you could try to do to get the most out of that movie and that message that we were just talking about is try not judge and dismiss the characters, specifically Haley, because I feel like that ends up viewing her as bad. I think it ends up taking away a lot of the message the director was trying to send. But obviously, it is also, I still recommend all of that aside. I just think it's unfortunate that it can have that effect to view these characters, these types of worse off as.
Ben?
I would say one of the most interesting. And we see the kids a lot, and I may be reaching here. I don't think I am, but a lot of this are shot with them kind of finding shelter in the shadow or being underneath stairs, hotel, or shielding themselves from a tree. And I think that what that gave to me, they're kind of the shadow, not that big, but stood out. I think that the way they're able to show the director, like you said, everything together through small little things like that, being able to tie in, I thought really shows how immersive, as we've been talking about this, and it's just so powerful. I sobbed for a long time after watching this film, and I can say in the first movie I've watched in a long time that days later I just can't stop thinking. I've been the past couple days since we watched it, I have a list of my favorite movies, and it's been moving up the list.
Oh,
And it's at number 6 right now. And I'm like, it's probably going higher because I just keep thinking about different conversation. Brings out so much more. And I think I could just talk about it for hours. A phenomenal.
yeah. Anybody else?
I felt when we first finished the movie, everyone had such insanely emotional reactions to it. Everyone had said that they felt that the ending was extremely powerful and motivating to them. And at first, it didn't feel so powerful to me. I didn't find myself being completely swept away by the ending. It really took me time to sit down and process it and really allow myself to get into the shoes of Haley and into the shoes of Mooney because even though I wasn't trying to come through and be judgmental of Haley at any point during the film, just I naturally felt somewhat inclined to just be judgmental. It may be due to different situations that I'm used to, and just the fact that I've never been put in a situation where I would have to commit a crime to help support the ones that I love. But I felt a little bit uncomfortable with it, I guess, at first. And it took me just being able to fully understand the decisions of Haley and fully comprehend exactly what she was dealing with in order for me to take such a profound meaning away from the film. I definitely feel like this is one that mandates a rewatch. It's a very good film. I would highly recommend. It's a thinker for sure.
It's pretty late.
Pretty fucking.
I think a lot
It's
of
1:23 in the a.m. here in Sarasota, Florida.
yeah, we're running low on steam. I don't know about you guys. I didn't get much sleep.
I'm sleepy
I'm
as
drinking
hell.
coffee right now. I'm feeling good.
Cooper sounds like he's fully shut down. So
Pretty much.
yeah, be like that. Well, I wanna thank all of you for bearing through,
It's been a
for
pleasure.
watching the movie with me, and being on the first and
Anytime,
Thank you
Nabil.
for having.
Thanks for having
Dope
us.
movie, dope folks.
and I think there's gonna be a lot more to come. I don't think we got many better things to do.
Yeah, that's for sure.
That's right.
What can people expect in
Well, thank you for asking, Ben. People can expect some more of this, some more singular movie discussions. I want us to watch There Will Be Blood next, most likely. It's an excellent film. Watch that if you have.
I am excited. Not seen it yet.
It's something else. Not to get into it right now. It's a character study, basically. It's wonderful. It's now
Guess
streaming on
they
Netflix. So
Guess they gotta watch the next episode.
guess they do. We're gonna have some more quarantine freestyles, hopefully, where we just talk about anything and everything. And who knows what crazy ideas we come up with in the era of quarantine. So, my name is Nabil Sharif. This has been Ben Casey, Connor Park, Darian Nigro, Cooper Wisnett, and Jeffrey Williams talking about the Florida Project on the one, the only Filmatic. Q can't open it again.
But reverse.
Because we're
Backwards.
coding it. Yeah. There's music now. It sounds really cool. Ooh.